Hello, welcome to Rabbit Holes with Aaron. I am Aaron, a 20-year Marine Corps vet, and a lot of other things. One of the things that's going to be important today was I was a jailer at one point with this guy, with Travis Daniel. So, Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started on our rabbit hole.
All right. Yep. Like you said, he was a jailer at a county jail, and that's where we first met. And I'm no longer in the jail, but I still work for the sheriff's office in a different capacity. And looking forward to touching base with Aaron and figuring out more about each other.
Awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate you being here today. I really appreciate your perspective, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. And when we talked earlier, we were just a minute ago, actually, we were talking about what rabbit hole to start with, and we came up with listening. So I've never targeted listening as my first rabbit hole yet, but I'm kind of excited about it because I already got all kinds of stuff going on in here. And because I've got all kinds of stuff going on, I'm just going to get us started on listening. And when I was thinking about listening, there's something I've heard a lot, and you've probably heard it too. Like we got two ears and one mouth, and the proportion should kind of be that way. Probably to a successful and happy life is listening twice as much as you talk, And I've really been thinking a lot about our body, about the human body, and our bodies, I guess. We all have different ones, right? And, and just the proportions that our bodies have. And they have so much to teach us, about what we're here for and what we're supposed to be about. I mean, for example, we got legs. Well, why do we have legs for sitting down? Well, actually, some people theorize that we have the body in the proportion it is so we can run. But that's another rabbit hole for another time. But listening is with our ears. And, when you think about it, our ears are kind of small. Actually, just little holes inside of our head with like cartilage flaps. Anything about that sound interesting or exciting or curious?
Yeah.
For you?
And you can also get some assistance through hearing aids if you can't hear.
Yeah.
No, as good as you used to could.
Yeah, that was me. That is me. Oh, yeah, I could. Well, why not? I mean, I was in the Marine Corps, heard a lot of artillery and a lot of other loud noises, and get out of the Marine Corps and I don't have the ability to hear. Well, you think you do until your wife says something, right, on the wrong side of you. And then it's like, what did you say? And when you realize you're asking that about everything. So I went to the VA and asked for an audiology exam, and yeah, they said, yeah, you can't really hear very good. We got to get you some hearing aids. And so, yeah, at the age of 50, actually at the age of 48, or 49, I got hearing aids. But I heard a lot of crazy things. What do you got?
That might be why I say what to everything. My wife says what.
Yeah.
Now, so going back to listening and the body, and you got two ears and whatnot. One thing that I had learned when they sent me to the police academy was active listening.
Yeah.
And it's like they want us to listen percentage wise 80% of the time and talk 20% of the time.
Ooh. Okay.
So throughout the years, I've learned to really just, when I'm dealing with people, I like to just sit back and listen, and I let them get it all out. And
Sure.
that's something hard for some people to do.
Yeah.
But I find it pretty easy to sit back and just let people talk, let them get it out, get it off their chest. And a lot of times, that's really all people want too, is just for somebody to
Yeah.
listen to them or somebody to talk to. So
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about on this podcast in earlier episodes, like this book. It's called Never Split the Difference, and it's about negotiation. But the main point of the entire book is listening, really listening, active listening. Like, because when two people on separate sides of the table, and I'm sure that really fits for you, as a deputy, that you're on one side of the table and the guy who's doing whatever thing they're doing wrong in their car is on the other side of the table. But the book says that as you listen to them, you come to the same side of the table. Like, not that, you're going to let him go with his 100-mile-an-hour speeding or whatever, but that all of a sudden the fight is out and all of a sudden you can agree on things because you listen to him. Or you can, I'm sure in your situation, you can assess, I've got a wife giving birth in the back seat, here's the head of the baby, and you'd be like, I'm going sirens with you to the hospital. So, but listening, go ahead.
No, I mean, just I'm gonna have to check that book out because that all makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure you see it every day. Yeah, it's just this crazy. I mean, it's crazy though, right? Because we're thinking, well, I need to fight them or I need to subdue them. And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. I need to overcome them and I need to outthink them and I need to outdo this. And it's like, no, you don't have to do any of that. Actually, just listen, hear how they feel, and all of a sudden, I mean, you come onto the same side, right? And all of a sudden it's like, what do you need me to do? And I'm like, well, I really wanted you to just listen. Oh, oh, wow, I didn't know I'd solve all your problems by listening. I had a
Hmm.
10-step process for you to go through to solve your own problems, but I listened and you solved them while I was listening. I'm like, wow, right?
Yeah, and you probably got to experience some of that working in the jail too.
Yeah. Yeah, you're sitting there in law library with somebody and they're just, they're talking about how their situation is and what was wrong and what they did wrong and what maybe the police did, they thought police did wrong or whatever, and you just listen. I mean, I guess you can tell them to be quiet. Maybe some jailers did, but I was like, no, really, man, that does sound tough. I wonder if there's anything in here that can help you. If there's a book or something. Well, I don't know. So you just get to interact with them. All of a sudden, you know, they're just another human. Yeah, there's some constraints. There's some boundaries. They done some things wrong. That's not even something I know or can see as a jailer. But what I can see is that, I can take a little bit of the burden off their shoulders just by listening.
That's right.
So, yeah, yeah, listening, negotiation. I mean, it's so crazy that we want to go out and want to do this good and make the world a better place as a Marine, you know, as a jailer, whatever, as just another human being too. You want to make the world a better place. And it's like, well, you're going to have to bust some heads. You're going to have to get in fights. You're going to have conflict. And it's like, well, actually, or just hear me out for 5 seconds or just listen to them. No, it couldn't be that easy, right?
Right, right. You're talking about like negotiations and stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of like the heart of negotiation, isn't it? Like just hearing people out, listening to them, and getting people to do things without, using any type of force, really. Have them just step outside and go in handcuffs.
Well, and
Peacefully.
that's exactly, and that's a big part of chapter 2 in the book. Never Split the Difference, actually, and I'll only remember because I just read it. And that is, the FBI agents are waiting out in the hallway, and the FBI negotiation team, and they're like, well, we don't know what's going on inside there. There's no phone. We can't call them and negotiate with them. All they got is 3 gunmen and a few hostages in an apartment room. And they're like, well, we don't know what else to do. We can't really go in there. People will die. Well, let's empathize with the hostage takers. And so they whisper things through the door like, man, we know you're scared you're going to get thrown in jail. We know it's scary. What if you die? What if the hostages die? It must be scary in there. You know, is there a way that we can get out of this without anybody getting hurt or whatever? And they didn't even give solutions. They just listened and listened. And like a few hours later, the hostage takers just come out, lay their guns down and come out and let all the hostages go. And they're like, I guess the FBI negotiation team is like, I guess we really need to rethink our tactics because we were thinking SWATs and snipers and flashbangs and everything else. And all we had to do was whisper through the door. Like, Yeah.
Another reason I need to read the book.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I draw a lot of stuff from that in my personal life. So, what other things? Do you think of anything else related to listening or that you want to talk about? Or not related to listening? Anything?
Well, yeah, I feel like you could probably talk about some rabbit holes from listening for quite
Sure.
some time.
I can. Go ahead.
Well, I can't think of anything other than maybe just some like personal experiences working patrol on the streets and listening to folks if that's something that you want to talk about.
Perfect. Do it. Let's do it. I love it.
All right. Well, I will talk about a lady that was experiencing some demons.
Okay. That
Yeah,
sounds
so
juicy.
yeah, so not really something that I was too familiar with, but there was a lady who called in and she felt like she was gonna die.
Hmm.
And so we found her and she was in the dark in a trailer home,
Yeah.
um, kind of hunkered down. And so we had showed up and it was obvious she was experiencing something.
Yeah.
And she really felt like that night she was gonna die. And it was gonna be because of the demons.
Okay.
And so we got her to, step outside and, she continued to tell us about her fears and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just listen to her, and just tell her, hey, I can help you out if that's something that you're willing to do. And she was all about coming with me and being with me because I told her that, but if she wanted to do that, then I could make sure that she was going to be safe.
Yeah.
And so we got her all buckled up in the back of the car, and I had somewhere to take her and stuff like that. And then she started talking about, she was very knowledgeable of quite a few different like religious type things, like Christianity, and maybe it was, I don't know if it was Catholicism or whatever
Yeah.
it was, but it sounded like she was a very religious person.
Yeah.
And she was very knowledgeable, which to me, I guess I was kind of surprised that, she thought the demons were going to kill her that night if she was
Right.
very knowledgeable, very religious and stuff like that. And I think I think I did a little self Bible study that morning.
Okay.
And I think it was talking about Jesus being the good shepherd. And so she knew right away that what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I think it's John chapter 10. And so I see her in the back seat, and she's looking through my rearview mirror, and she's looking at me, and and she mentions my eyes, and
Yeah.
she's like, you know what? She's like, I can tell, I can see the kindness in your eyes, and she's like, you know what? I feel Jesus's presence, and I feel like she pretty
Yeah.
much saw Jesus in me.
Wow.
She's like, you know what? I'm fine. Everything's okay now, and we're almost to where we're about to go.
Right. Right.
Which we stuck with that plan, but
Right.
I thought it was pretty wild, and I know we kind of got off track of listening, and I went,
No, that's perfect. No, this is exactly what Rabbit Hole's about. Keep going.
okay. And so yeah, just hearing her out, and some people might have just been thinking, oh, she's crazy,
Yeah.
or anything, just not listening to her. And as soon as she started talking about all this religious stuff, I just was like, hey, this and that.
Yeah.
And she's like, she saw Jesus in me, so, and she was healed from her fears of, you know,
Yeah.
dying that night. So
What a good story. No, thank you for
yeah,
sharing that story.
yeah, I got a handful of those, but I'll let you take it away for now.
Oh yeah, sure. When you're talking about that, and she saw it, she saw Jesus in your eyes, but she saw kindness in your eyes. That makes me, if I can take it back to listening, like that makes me think of, you know, we think kind of small about listening. We got two ears, one mouth, but we're listening with every part of our body at all times. Because listening isn't just ears. Listening is seeing with our eyes. Listening is touching with our hand. Or, you know, we're listening all the time. If I feel a sharp, cutting motion on my arm, I'm going to jump away, right? We're always kind of listening to all of this nerve input, all this sensation. I know I'm in Texas, so I'm listening to what temperature it is, right? I'm listening to my body and all my nerves like, wow, I'm listening to my eyes. Oh, look, there's a thunderstorm. Well, is that a tornado? Is that one of those clouds that come down and make a tornado? We're really paying attention during tornado watch. We're listening with every sense, right? We're listening with our ears for the sound of a train. We're listening, and we're listening for sirens. So, like listening, a lot of times I couldn't believe when I realized when you read a book, you're listening with your eyes, right? And so, like, listening is a full body thing, or that's a new idea I have. I'm not trying to make any new points or anything, but that's just the idea I've been playing with, you know.
Uh,
And so many times people are talking at every sensory level. They're talking to us. They might not use a single word or even a single sound, but like that's I guess what we're trying to say when we say, "Oh, I got a strange vibe off of that person." You
mhm.
look like you have something.
Yeah, just I got that when you said you were getting a vibe off of somebody.
Yeah.
I experienced that a lot.
Yeah, do you get like, I mean, a whole range of vibes? So you get like, I'm not trying to get into the weeds here, but like a bad vibe off of somebody or a really good vibe off somebody.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll even get, the chills going down your back type of thing, which
Wow.
which to me is just like either it's an evil thing or yeah, there's some bad things going on
Yeah.
with this person or with this place and this person. So I guess yeah, that's kind of listening with your body for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and that was kind of a revolution of insight when the Marine Corps was first, in Iraq and Afghanistan. And how do I know? Because I went through some of the training to prepare for that. And it was like, the training was if you feel something's off, if you feel a bad vibe, you pause and you report it and you look around and you set up security and you do all this stuff. Or if you feel a vibe like you need to run in the middle of combat and urban terrain, then you tell everybody run that way. If you just get that vibe to listen to it, which is kind of, to me as a Marine is kind of weird. It's like, okay, Marines, so when you're in combat, listen to your feelings, or whatever. It's almost that weird, for Marines. Like we've got all this gear on, we got our rifles, and we're always looking and on the alert. We're listening to every sense, you know, and so many people in combat so they kind of sense the bullet flew right by me or the bullet almost, or whatever, life time slows down when you're, afraid for your life dying or whatever. But yeah, gosh, I went down about, I don't know, 18 rabbit holes. I was talking there. Like, just pick one. It's just any of those you're interested in at any time.
All right. Well, yeah, I think they wrote a book on that. I think it's called the Left of Bang is what it's called.
Really? Oh, you're
Yeah.
suggesting a book?
Yeah, it's called Left of Bang, and it was written by the Marines to pretty much like picking up on like profiling people and threats and
Yeah,
being ahead of the curve when it comes to, fighting terrorism or whatever it was.
right.
Have you heard of that one?
I haven't heard of that book. I wrote it down. I'm so happy you made a book suggestion. I'm excited to try and read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, cool. That does line up with this kind of listening aspect, right? And that goes back to the subconscious as well. Like the subconscious, they theorize. The people that theorize that your subconscious is taking in 40 million pieces of information a second. Thanks for listening to our podcast. We'll be right back in a minute, but first I want to tell you about some new exclusive access on our Patreon. So if you join as a member to Patreon, you can get access to Give Us Rabbit Holes through an exclusive Discord chat room. Also, we're going to be airing exclusive for Patreon member only episodes, full episodes. Let's get back to the program. Your mind is only able to process at max like 40. So it's like your subconscious is deciding perhaps what to give to your conscious mind, like lights on a dashboard, right? Check engine, low wiper washer fluid, almost empty gas tank. Like that's what our bodies, our subconscious is doing for us, like prompting, pay attention to this, like squirrel. We're just looking at whatever it shows us to look at. But yeah, left a bang. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to share any other stories or go ahead?
Well, let's see here. Yeah, I'll share some stories about working at some soup kitchens and some experiences up there. I used to work off duty at a soup kitchen, and a host of people there have, they're experiencing homelessness and
Yeah.
mental health, and definitely a lot of criminal type stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so I used to work there because I wanted to. Not many people actually wanted to work there, because of the people that you have to deal with and stuff like that. But I would work up there, and there was a lot of volunteers up there, and they actually kind of expressed their gratitude for me being there because of the way that I would talk with folks and listen to
Yeah.
people, and not just start going in there and just headbutting everybody because you can't do that and you're out of here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I would really just treat everybody the same, as
Sure.
humans. And just because I'm wearing a uniform doesn't make me any better or anything like that. So yeah, I had several experiences up there where people were thankful for the way that I was treating them, and they would let me know that.
Yeah.
So that was always a special thing, was people being grateful for the way that I handled myself or talking with folks and treating people with
Yeah.
respect and dignity and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing another story about the work at the soup kitchen. It's almost like the invisible life of, you know, well, I guess the sheriff department or the invisible life of the police or the invisible life or whatever. I really enjoy all these stories you're sharing me because it's like, that's what the people that are protecting and serving me, that's what I want them to be like a little bit, right? Kind and nice and wanting the best for people, even in bad situations. And, that's what we want. And of course, that's not what everybody wants. Some people want, a different picture of the police. But yeah, thank you for sharing what's going on in that area. I have to say though, to go back to an earlier rabbit hole, like, I want to hear more and, whatever you feel comfortable sharing about the chills down your spine. I bet you'll never be able to forget what was going on. I mean, I think about chills down my spine is like one time in my life and I barely remember it. But do you remember that story or just what was going on as much as you can share?
Well, yeah, I guess I encountered this couple one time that was sleeping in their car,
Mm.
and they were at a place which people actually say is haunted.
Mm.
And I'm not even going to mention the place or anything like that, but my thought was, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody should be out here unless they're up to no good, right?
Right.
And so I'm talking with them, and it was obvious they were asleep in their car, which is a very odd thing
Right.
considering the place and the time and stuff like that. And I just remember being like, asking them, like, do you know where you're at? why are you here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I guess the lady in the car was talking about how she's able to like see and talk and hear, I guess listen to like evil spirits and stuff. Oh, maybe they're good spirits too.
Right.
But I just remember getting a wave over me. I'm like, maybe I'm gonna get out of here because there's no reason for me to interact with these folks,
Yeah.
especially if they're talking about evil spirits and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, that might have been one instance where I had chills down my back.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's, yeah. One, I like how you decided to deal with it. Like, well, they're not hurting anybody, and I feel really weird. Maybe. And it's 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And I'm like, maybe this time I'll just, I won't, I'll go. I'll just leave them
Uh,
be,
right. Y'all have fun.
Yeah. You're not doing nothing wrong that I can see, or something really, really wrong that I can't see, so I'm out. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah, there was actually, she described herself actually as, I can't remember what it is when you can see and hear and talk and interact with spirits,
Like
but
clairvoyant or something like that, or
yeah. But
medium.
like the one that can do it all. So I was like,
Nice to meet you.
yeah.
Okay, I'll be going now. Yeah, understandably so. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, well, we can
No
come back to
problem.
listening at any point. I was going to go back to my first thing, too, that, like, the proportions of the body, just for a second. And we find something here cool. If we don't, we'll just move to something else that you come up with. But yeah, the body. And I just thought about this today. Me and my wife were talking because, I've been thinking just like what I talked about. You got 2 ears, one mouth, right? You got, you can look at 2 eyes. Wow, 2 ears and 2 eyes. The proportions are the same or whatever. You can look at the body, which I believe to have been created by God. And so you look at it and you're like, huh, what was I made for? Do I have seat cushions for a behind? Well, then I guess I was made for sitting. Oh, wait. Do I have bigger arms than legs? Then maybe I'm meant to walk on my arms, Or, it's just that same logic and trying to solve, you know, what my body might have to teach me about how I'm supposed to act, you know. And the last point I had, and to see before I see if you have anything, is that, the body was, I think everybody's body, well, not everybody. Some people are disabled, and that's fine. But most bodies are made, to move. The biggest, the new smoking, I guess they say, and I heard this years ago, the new smoking is sitting, is being sedentary. Like, it's worse for you. I've joked that the lazy boy is a death sentence. Stay away. Because we're not made to be sedentary. Everything falls apart and breaks and ages twice as fast. Not that we can't lay still to sleep and, sit for a little while, but like we're not, you can look to see we're primarily made for movement. Do you have something, any rabbit
I
holes
mean,
there?
so I don't have a lazy boy in the house. My wife wouldn't let me get one. But
Smart lady, she wants you around. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
talking about being designed to move, and I noticed you kind of picked up running here recently, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
So running is one of my favorite pastimes. I actually got my wife into running several years back, and she despised it for the longest time. And now she just yesterday morning she ran 7 miles with her friends,
Wow.
and so
Impressive.
yeah, it's definitely one of our favorite things to do together, and then we're able to talk to each other, and that's some of the best times is going out on a run and being able to talk with my wife and figure out how each other's day went and
Yeah.
what we got going on with
So
the
you actually,
schedule.
you talk while you're running? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
understanding?
yeah, that's probably whenever we're able to really interact with each other and figure out where we're at and how our days went. And like I was saying, our planning our schedules ahead and
Yeah.
appointments and stuff like that. So
Wow. I
that's,
can bear me and my wife sit down to plan, right? We sit down to talk. I mean, I'm trying to get her to talk when we're running, but she's kind of new to running. When I was in the Marine Corps, I ran, I don't know, I'm probably over 10,000 miles somewhere for 20 years, running. But so I'm kind of, my muscles remember it, and I'm getting
right.
to my old pace and whatever. She doesn't have that. So she's pushing herself and I'm like, so how is it? It's hard, it's hard, it's hard, or whatever. And so we really can't talk at this stage as much, but it's a
Yeah.
process. It takes progress.
Yeah. Going back to your body and your pace and stuff like that.
Yeah,
My, my pace was actually pretty quick. And when you have a new runner, they're going to be winded and, have a 15
yeah,
minute mile pace and stuff like that and
yeah,
walk, run, which is perfectly fine and that's normal. But now, my wife is running faster than me and I'm back
yeah,
there huffing and puffing. And so it's great and it's a part of it. And yeah, it's definitely something that we enjoy quite a bit. So I'm glad to see you back to running.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. But as you run, at least when you're starting, and I guess I'm starting over to some extent, but you're like, ow, why does my leg hurt like this? Maybe I'm running wrong, and you got pains in different places or especially your calves. When you're running slower, you're using your calves more and you got all this leg. You got these big thigh muscles and hamstring muscles and hips and, butt and everything else. Gluteus, I was trying to think of it, whatever Latin word, so I sounded more official, but, whatever. But you got all these muscles for running and walking and movement. And, I'm running and dragging my feet and my calves are just the only muscle. The smallest muscle in my legs is what I'm using to run. And so we're working on in the middle of the pain, you have all these wonderful realizations about your legs. Wow, this hurts. That doesn't hurt. Well, this doesn't hurt at all. And so you try like, well, let's spread that pain over my muscles or whatever. Yeah, you get all this time to think when you're running.
That sounds that sounds mental.
Well, and maybe it's all an elaborate plan of mine to avoid thinking about how much it hurts, the pain.
Yeah. And I'm sure running is a total body. Everything is connected, working in unison.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, if too much too soon, then I can see how the calves would be hurting.
yeah, you're overloading. Yeah, spread the load a little bit better,
But I will give you another book about running, and it's like a total body experience type thing, everything in unison. It's called Chi Running, CHI Running.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
I got it somewhere around here and read it several years back. And so anytime I'm out and say I am struggling or having a hard time, I resort back to the Chi Running, which is has a lot of principles and stuff that are pretty unique and helpful. So
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah.
yeah,
Helping us all get healthier. I mean, running, it doesn't seem like it's most people's first option for health. You know what I'm saying? At least in my circles. It's like, well, I want a diet, or now I want this new shot, or, whatever. I want some more pills, please. And running is like, it solves so many problems, right?
it's readily available too.
Yeah. You need a pair of shoes and, clothes to cover your body a little bit and just go anywhere. It's not even like roller skating. With roller skating, I have, outdoor wheels and indoor wheels. Well, I'm going to go roller skating outside. Well, okay. I get my wrench and get all the outdoor wheels off. It's not that way with running. I can just put on my shoes and run right out of the front door and wherever the road goes, as far as I want, whenever I want. I can do it at 3 in the morning. I can do it at 5 in the afternoon. So anytime. You're right. Sometimes I think we miss the availability, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. Well, I was thinking about when we're talking about running too, I don't know. You can tell me what you think about this. Well, let's go back to the brain first. So what I've heard in my training at college is that you got a lizard brain is the base of the core of the brain. And then on top of that, you have a mammal brain. And then on top of the mammal brain, you have a human brain. So, we're a little bit like those different groups of animals because the human brain sits on top of everything. And they say, and I read this actually in a book about police, or that was primarily on police. It was called On Combat. It's the name of the book. On Combat. You should check it out if you haven't heard of it already. But anyway, it talks about these different brains and that the mammal brain is a survival brain. I mean, it's the survive in an emergency brain. And so whatever you can get into the mammal brain, it's got even when your heart rate is high. Even when you lose hand-eye coordination, you still have access to that mammal brain. And what you do to get it into the mammal brain is repetition. As an example, and I think this is in that book on combat, the story, they say, and this is back in the day when you have either a rotary or push button phone, and they say that in an emergency, people cannot actually dial 911. If they know they're in an emergency, their heart rate goes up too fast, they lose hand-eye coordination, and they can't actually even see which buttons are which. And that's us. That's all of us. I say they, but I mean humans. So what they found to do where everybody could dial 911 emergency, this is going to maybe blow your mind. Maybe not. I don't know. But you have everybody in your family, you unhook the phone, unhook it from telephone system, and you have them actually press 911 on the buttons 20. They found that allows you to do that even when you're in your mammal brain, even when your heart rate's 150. So yeah, I just think about our mammal brains, and I think about running, and when I run, like, I don't have much human brain. You know what I'm saying? I mean, for me anyway, I do now, but usually when I'm running, I feel like I'm operating under learned behaviors, and like I've run a lot of times, my body's going to keep running. The pace might depend on how in shape I am, but like my brain knows this move of running because I ran a lot, you know.
yeah.
What do you
I get
think?
I get what you're saying through just the repetitions, and you're in a different form of your brain because of that, which is very interesting. And I haven't thought too much about that, but
Yeah,
I'll definitely have to check out that book and look more into it.
yeah. Well, and that book, to talk about it a little bit more while I got the chance, because I haven't even talked about that book in any of my episodes so far. In the book on combat, he really talks about new like policies and procedures and evidence-based practices, the police officers are doing it in their reaction times and every aspect of how they do their job, thinking in a critical situation where you're getting shot at. So they talk about square breathing in there, and that they just started teaching police departments how to do square breathing. Because when you get in, it sounds like you have heard that.
Yeah, yeah, I've come across that a handful of times, and there's some other forms of breathing too that
Yeah,
that are even more dumbed down than square breathing. But I've found myself using that too, where you do equal counts for breathing in, for pausing before
right,
breathing out, your breath out, and then holding before you
right.
breathe back in, which makes that box like you're talking about.
Yeah,
But Another one is just you take two big inhales through your nose like this, like hold it briefly and then exhale for just an extended period of time, whatever, until you have to breathe
Hmm.
again, you know. So it's
Yeah.
like two in, one out. That's a lengthy exhale.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And the reason for these breathing exercises, especially for our law enforcement, is because in that moment, everybody's heart rate will go up and up to like 150 beats a minute, or, even in the situation. And so uh, they found that square breathing would bring their heart rates down to just over 100, and then now they can aim again. Now they can see. Now they can plan. Like, hey, you go around that way, I'm going to go around this way. They can plan, you can strategize, you can use all your human brain functions, so to speak, if you can bring your heart rate down. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
It is. That's about as basic as you can get too, is managing your breathing, you know, just
Yeah,
to be able to process your thoughts and being able to see and stuff like that to handle critical situations. So
right.
that is something that we talk about, you know, working patrol and stuff like that, especially for trainees that we have coming in.
Yeah,
You have a high stress thing, you have to work on your breathing, you know.
yeah,
Otherwise, you might get locked up in the moment and make the wrong decision.
yeah, breathing. Well, that reminds me of a sign I saw one time. So I was getting worked on by the kinesiologist. There we go. I got it. Kinesiologist. And they were like, there was this little gun they had, and they work on different muscles anyway. So you're laying there on this table, and they're pretty much using power tools on your body to knock bones back in place and stuff. And on the inside of the ceiling there, where you can see, is a sign that says breathing. You know, and I looked at it in pain, and and I thought about it, and I thought, you know, you can make it through anything if you just keep breathing. At first, I was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. How does that help people? But then as I was forced to look at it for the entire appointment, for every appointment, eventually it started to, noodle its way into my brain of, wait a minute, that's profound. And the police need it as much as normal people, as much as the politicians, as much as the homeless. It's a message that's good for everybody. It looked like you were going to say
Yeah.
something. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a little sign like that in my house, and it's funny because it'll catch my attention ever so often, but when it's needed the most, you know.
Yeah.
And all it is
Wow.
is all it is a little like paperweight. It's a
Huh?
rock, and somebody engraved on it just says breathe.
Huh?
And so I'll find it laying around here and there throughout the house. And, you know, whenever you're stressed out or you're in a hurry or whatever, and you look down and you see that rock that's
Yeah.
almost made it in the trash throughout the years, but I've kept it around, and it just reminds you, you know, to
Yeah.
breathe and get back to the simple things, you know.
Yeah. I talk all the time about breathing for others, even. Like some people are tense and holding their breath, and I'm like, I can feel it. Maybe I'm teaching them pottery, and I can feel this person's really tense and kind of anxious. Like, and I notice I start holding my breath. And then I'm like, wait a minute, why am I holding my breath in a couple seconds? And I'm like, man, why am I taking such deep breaths? What's going on? And then like my conscious mind is like, that person's anxious. Hold on a second. And then, the funny thing is, I let them know. I'm like, hey, I'm breathing for you right now, you know? And they're like, you are? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And they remember, like, I need to breathe, and then they start breathing for themselves again, which is good, you know?
That would be funny to see.
Yeah. Well, and you never know how people are going to take stuff, and the first time I thought of that, telling them, I was like, well, I don't know. Don't want them to be offended, And I was like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Hey, by the way, I'm breathing for you right now. And they're like, yeah, I'm really tense. And, and they diffused and they started breathing, and then they kind of focus. And I let them know they've got an hour and 45 minutes left in the class. Take your time and to do whatever I can to help them besides breathe. And then they're like, wow, thanks. Yeah. And they really relax and start making beautiful things. But yeah, breathing for others.
Speaking of that, I need to do a workshop and do some pottery with you.
Yes, you do. And whenever you're ready, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I'm here. So I can definitely do that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, it has been wonderful hanging out with you for a little bit and going down a few rabbit holes, catching up with you along the way. Thank you so much for being with us today, Travis.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching back up with you whenever you're in town because I know you are a nomad running around the United States.
Well, I will text you later because I am in Texas, so right now.
Me too.
Yeah, okay, brother. Well, we'll see you soon and have a good evening. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Tune in to Patreon and Facebook, and we're now on Red Note for more Rabbit Holes with Aaron. Thanks.